Hello and welcome. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran.
And I'm Prasar.
It's 10 a.m. in New Delhi, 5:30 in the morning in London, and 30 minutes past midnight in New York City. And you're watching a special broadcast here on DD India. We are interrupting our usual programming to bring to you India's Budget 2024.
So India will present its national budget for the financial year 2024 and 2025 in less than 1 hour from now. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman is set to deliver her budget speech in the Lok Sabha, the lower chamber of India's legislature. We'll get you that live when it begins at 11 a.m. India time, that is 5:30 GMT.
That's right. We'll have guests joining us to put the budget in its proper context and perspective for you.
And we'll also get you the latest from our full complement of reporters. But first up, the headlines.
India's Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman to present the country's budget for 2024-25 soon meets President Draupadi Murmu ahead of budget presentation.
Markets open in the green ahead of the budget. India's chief economic advisor says the country's economy is on a strong wicket and on a stable footing amid global challenges. Economic growth projected at 6.5 to 7% for this fiscal.
And watch a live and exclusive coverage on India's Budget 2024 all day long on DD India, complete with news, views and analyses. Join an expert panel that will decode the budget for you.
So we are counting down to the presentation of India's budget. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman will present the 2024-25 budget in the lower chamber of the country's legislature at 11 a.m. local time, that is 5:30 GMT.
It'll be her 7th consecutive budget, which is a record in itself. It will also be the first budget in the third term of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government.
Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman left the North Block offices of the Finance Ministry with a copy of the Union Budget 2024-25. And ahead of the budget presentations, she headed to Rashtrapati Bhavan and met President Draupadi Murmu.
And Minister Sitharaman, along with her team of officials, posed for the photographers, sporting the red Bahi Khata or diary, in other words, the digital tablet this time, before they left for the President's house. And the Minister reached Parliament House just ahead of the budget presentation.
Soon after the budget, Minister Sitharaman will present the Jammu and Kashmir budget for 2024-25 in the lower house of Parliament.
Now, it will be the 5th consecutive budget of Jammu and Kashmir to be presented in Parliament in the absence of a legislative assembly in the Union Territory. Now, this being an election year in Jammu and Kashmir, some welfare measures are to be expected in the budget. Now, since 19th June 2018, when the BJP withdrew its support to the Mehbooba Mufti-led government, Jammu and Kashmir is without an elected government.
So the Sensex opened in the green. It's currently up to 29.89 points, trending at 80,731.97 on budget day. Benchmark Nifty opened at 24,568.9. That's an increase of 0.24% or 59.65 points.
Now, the expectations of the Indian markets revolve around several key areas, with investors and stakeholders looking for measures that can drive economic growth, improve market and sentiment, and foster a conducive environment for investments.
Market experts anticipate potential tweaks in the income tax slabs or increased exemptions, which can boost disposable income and consumption. They are also expecting reduction or rationalization in corporate tax rate that could positively impact corporate profitability and investment sentiment. Market expert Purv Shah says that the market is expecting a cut or removal of capital gains tax.
Markets have always been looking for a cut in this, either a cut or in fact a removal of long-term capital gains completely, and that would lead to markets to rejoice.
Investors also say that increased allocation to infrastructure and development projects, including roads, railways, ports, and urban development, is expected. This can spur economic activity and benefit sectors like construction, cement, and steel.
Markets are also looking for infrastructure and developmental spend in the budget. It's always been on the increasing side, and I think an increase in infrastructure and developmental spend will also, this year in the budget also would be there.
Initiatives under production, linked incentive, that is PLI scheme, or other measures to boost the manufacturing sector is also expected. Policies promoting renewable energy, electric vehicles and sustainability are expected, aligning with global environmental goals and fostering new growth sectors. Investors will closely watch the announcements for their immediate and long-term impact on various sectors, and any positive news in budget will lead the markets to rise higher. Shama Mishra's report for DD India.
So now Dibyendu Mandal is joining us from Parliament and Shama Mishra is joining us from Mumbai. Dibyendu, will come to you because that's where all the action is right now, with the Finance Minister and the team of budget makers already there. We saw Minister of State Pankaj Chaudhary also there. So has the cabinet meeting started?
Yes, the cabinet meeting is about to begin. The Prime Minister is about to arrive. You have to leave me here because there's a route that the Prime Minister's route is in place.
No worries.
We are being requested. I'll join you in about 5 minutes from now, but you'll have to leave me for the next 5 minutes.
All right, Dibyendu will come back to you momentarily. If I can go across to my other colleague who is standing by in Mumbai, Shama Mishra. Shama, morning to you. How are the markets faring as we speak?
Well, Ramesh, for starters, as Munmun has already said, that markets did open in green, but now if you see, it's not trading in green and it's trading in red. However, it's not really very low, not really very much in the red zone, but yeah, it's the Sensex is about 85 points down, and for Nifty as well. So we have always seen that during the budget, during the announcement of the budget, markets are always volatile, and we do see these kind of patterns because the investors are closely watching, closely monitoring the announcements, and once the announcements start to happen, once Nirmala Sitharaman, the Finance Minister, starts tabling her budget, at that time we will have to see how the markets are reacting, because a lot of a lot of things are riding on various infrastructure sectors or other sectors related to the development area as we progress towards achieving the goal of Viksit Bharat. So all these sectors will be closely watched. For now, we are saying that markets are trading in red, but it's not very something which really has to be worried about, as we had seen on the announcement of the results of the Lok Sabha. But yes, we will have to wait and watch for the announcements as and when the Finance Minister does it, and how the markets and the investors are reacting at that time.
Yes, also Shama, if you could tell us what are the indicators that the markets are expecting from the budget?
Well, I've already mentioned that on announcement of the budget, the investors are closely scrutinizing all the announcements that the finance minister makes, and today is no different. And we did see the start that it was in green, but now it's trading in red, and we are hopeful that it will soon turn in green. But given the record that markets have always or mostly been in the red zone on the day of the announcement of the budget, we will have to see today as well. What really impacts these investors or the market as whole is the various significant announcements. First of all is the fiscal deficit. The announcement of the fiscal deficit, how much the government is going to spend, how much is the borrowing going to be. All these really impacts the economy, and the investors will be actually looking for it. If we are talking about a higher deficit, fiscal deficit, so we will have to face that higher interest rates. And once the people are burdened with higher interest rates, it will impact the economy. Once this happens, you will see that the markets will go in the red zone. If there is a balanced fiscal deficit, then there'll be a green a zone where the markets would be actually functioning. Apart from this, I was also mentioning that what all sectors government are going to lay their emphasis on, thrust on, for example, R&D, for example, the new and renewable energy area, the EV. All these would be also keenly watched. We are also talking about the taxes. So first of all, it's income tax. If the slab, if the exemption in the income tax slab actually gets higher, people will get relief. The salaried class will get relief. They will have more income. They will have more money rather in their hand to spend. And once that money comes into the system, that disposable income comes into the system, it will actually be a beneficial factor for the economy. So this is actually impacting the economy. And if there is an exemption or a higher tax slab announcement in this budget, then the markets will react positively, and we will see a green zone playing over there as well. We are also seeing, the investments that I've told you. So in
Right.
various sectors. So, for example, if you're talking about infrastructure, if there is an increased investment in infrastructure, there are new projects. So there'll be, the investors would be looking out for stocks related to companies with steel, cement, and other construction-related stocks, construction-related
Right.
companies.
Shama, do
So
stay
all
on.
these would be,
I hate to
in
interrupt you
connection.
there, but
And
let
as
me
and when
quickly
we
go across to our colleague Debyendu Mondal, who is standing outside Parliament House. Debyendu, it's the first full budget in Prime Minister Modi's third term in government, and Minister Sitaraman will present her 7th consecutive budget, a record in itself. Set it up for our viewers, please.
Well, Ramesh, that's right. Firstly, apologies for the last time because, as I said, there was a route for the Prime Minister. But however, of course, this will be the third budget of Modi 3.0, Modi government's, in fact, third term's first budget. So, of course, and for Nirmala Sitharaman as the finance minister, it will be her 7th consecutive budget, which no other women finance minister of India have ever, achieved this feat. So, of course, this is something that everyone is looking forward to. We were also talking to some of the senior leaders in the Modi cabinet, and everyone is talking about how this budget is going to be all about, Viksit Bharat and for the development of India. They're very positive that this budget will bring about development, and, all the measures is perhaps going to be taken in the budget that would lead India in the right path of development and the $5 trillion economy that the government is aiming by the end of this 5-year. So, of course, the Union Cabinet, the Prime Minister has arrived here. The Union Cabinet is shortly to begin from now. The scheduled time is 10:15 a.m. for the Union Cabinet, after which, after the Union Cabinet gives the approval of the budget, Nirmala Sitharaman, along with her Minister of State and the Finance Ministry team, would proceed to the lower house of the Lok Sabha, where at 11 a.m. She will be laying the papers on table to present the budget, the first budget of Modi 3.0, in fact the first full budget of Modi 3.0 this time in Parliament. It will be at about 11 a.m. Leaders, parliamentarians have started arriving from about 9:45 a.m. We have been tracking it here inside the Parliament building, where senior leaders, ministers, Union Minister, we just saw Rajnath Singh, Defence Minister, Home Minister, Amit Shah, other cabinet cabinet ministers, including Jyotiraditya Scindia, Jayant Chaudhary, all arriving at the Parliament building to attend this crucial Union Cabinet, where the budget approval by the Union Cabinet is going to take place. What we are picking up is that the Union Cabinet has also begun, and shortly from now, Nirmala Sitharaman will proceed to the Lok Sabha to present her budget. So, of course, lot of expectations in this budget, which would perhaps, as I've been saying, will lead the path towards development. There are expectations from the middle class, expectation in the market, in the manufacturing sector, in the construction sector. So, a lot of expectation. Let's see what the budget unfolds in the Parliament.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. In less than 45 minutes from now, we expect the budget presentation to start in the lower house of Parliament, that is the Lok Sabha, and the cabinet meeting has begun, is what you've just told us. Thank you, Dibendu. Shama, we'll request you to stay on. For now, the President of India's office has tweeted, India's President Draupadi Murmu has extended her best wishes to the Union Finance Minister ahead of the budget. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, along with Minister of State for Finance Pankaj Chaudhary and senior officials of the Ministry of Finance, called on President Draupadi Murmu at Rashtrapati Bhavan before presenting the Union budget a short while ago. And these are some snapshots from that meeting.
All right, time to bring in our guests who are joining us on this special broadcast. Joining us are Professor Ashok Viswandas and Ms. Archana Jahagirdar. Professor Viswandas teaches at the Indian Institute of Public Administration, New Delhi, and Ms. Jahagirdar is a managing partner at Rukam Capital in New Delhi. She was associated with Startup Mahakumbh, which was a first of its kind event, bringing together the entire startup ecosystem of India, including startups, investors, incubators, accelerators, and industry leaders. Munmun.
Oh, absolutely. Well, Mr. Viswandas, a lot really to talk on, lot riding on her shoulders, lot of expectations of the common man, of the industry, of various sectors. What is the big picture ahead of the budget that you see?
I think this budget is going to be very excellent because the roadmap for making the country a developed nation by 2047, that is the driving agenda for the government of the day. It will be devoid of any populism or the appeasement policy. It will be very growth oriented, and because the economic power is the currency of the power, because economic strength is most, and I think that everything what will we are expected to see will revolve around how to make country more strong and how to make country the third largest in next few years and ultimately make it a developed nation, and that's the long term road. And then whatever will be done in a step by step, those will the steps, and I expect it will be from economic point of view, because government has no compulsion to be populist this time. The election are over just now, so they will face election after 5 years or so. So therefore, it will be economically very, very prudent. And this also is reflected in the economic survey yesterday. Normally, I never remember when IMF projection is 7% and government is saying that it will be less than between 6.5 and 7 bandwidth. That is very, very realistic. They want to be very, very, very prudent and cautious, and they want to proceed. So they build the strength, and then when the economy is at the strong footing and the foundation is strong, and the edifice that will be built on it will be very, very strong. So this will be excellent budget from economics point of view.
Okay, excellent, says Professor Viswandas. Ms. Jahagirdar, coming to you now from an industry perspective. Would consolidation and prudence be the watchword, or you think we can expect some bigger, better, bolder reform measures as well?
I think the industry is expecting bigger, better, bolder reforms, because really, in the context of the startup ecosystem, I mean, the SEBI chairman has been talking about concerns around futures and options as being just trading for the sake of it. Whereas, when you invest in startups, you create business activity, you create jobs, and you create wealth. So I would really, urge the government and the Honorable Finance Minister to look at incentives to investors who are taking a very high risk when they come in very early into a startup, because that really is an overall good for our economy, and it really will lead to the growth and becoming, whether it's a $5 trillion economy or a $10 trillion economy. If you look at the American markets, if you look at their stock market, the biggest companies like Microsoft, Apple, Google, Facebook, they were all invested by venture capital, and look at what they've done to the size of the American economy. So if we want to really grow our economy, we need to be kinder and do bolder reforms in a broader sense for the industry.
So you expect bolder reforms. Would you expect the same, or would you think that there are structural reforms that have happened and the government could perhaps build on that and ensure that they reach to the logical conclusion? Please,
yeah, I think it will be a stepping stone for making the country, because this economic strength is the currency of power. This government wants to showcase not only the domestic constituency but the international. They want to stand out, and then one thing more will be, they are not going to replicate or copy or emulate any developing or developed nation. They have own Bharatiya way of development, and then it's a Viksit Bharat in the sense that it will have every component of indigenous and homegrown solution to the problem. They are not going to emulate any other country. So it will be a very newer kind of thing, innovation in this, because India is a very unique country, and therefore the solution has to be unique, homegrown solution and domestic and Indianized solution, and therefore I'm expecting a very different budget this year compared to the preceding years.
Much like what the Chief Economic Advisor said in the economic survey in the context of climate action, you are saying that this is going to be a very indigenous outlook towards the budget.
Indigenous outlook, and because India is a unique country, there are so many features which show that India is very different from rest of the world, and therefore, and first thing is, we are the most populous country. No other country can match our population. That's one good thing, and because it's not only the so many mouths 1.43 billion people eat, but they have double of it hands who can work. So that will be, I think, will be used so that it will be leveraged. So many hands to work and so many things, and the job employment and everything. It will be a very, very newer kind of innovation I am expecting.
Right, Professor Vishen Das, Ms. Jahagirdar, do stay on. Time to pull up some more information for viewers watching this special broadcast. I want you to take a look at the highlights of the interim budget 24 that was tabled by Minister Sitaraman ahead of the 2024 parliamentary election.
With the new government sworn in, all eyes are now on the first comprehensive union budget of the Narendra Modi 3.0 administration. As India aims to become the world's third largest economy in the coming years, various sectors are abuzz with new expectations, from income tax to green energy and tourism. Let's take a look at the key highlights of 2024 interim budget tabled by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman in February ahead of India's general elections. Building on the massive tripling of the capital expenditure, the outlay for the next year was increased by 11.1% to 11.11 lakh crore. That compromises of 3.4% of the GDP. However, tax slabs in the tax structure were kept unchanged.
कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर को 11,11,111 करोड़ रुपए की ऐतिहासिक ऊंचाई दी गई है। अर्थशास्त्रियों की भाषा में कहें तो एक प्रकार से स्वीट स्पॉट है। इससे भारत में 21वीं सदी के आधुनिक इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर के निर्माण के साथ ही युवाओं के लिए अनगिनत रोजगार के नए अवसर तैयार होंगे।
Ministry of Defence was allocated the highest share of grant with a record fund of rupees 6.21 lakh crore. That also included rupees 1 lakh crore corpus for deep tech for long-term loans to youth. For railways, a large-scale conversion project was announced with the aim to convert 40,000 normal rail bogies to new-age Vande Bharat trains. Also, implementation of 3 major railway corridor programs were announced. Under the mega housing scheme, PM Awas Yojana ruler, 2 crore additional houses will be taken up in the next 5 years to meet the requirement. With focus on strengthening healthcare, benefits under the Ayushman Bharat insurance scheme were extended to the basic primary health segment, including all Asha and Anganwadi staff. Another major announcement was made under the rooftop solar campaign that will benefit 10 million households to avail up to 300 units of free electricity every month. Additional measures were announced to meet net zero commitments that included a viability gap fund and assistance of Rs 150 crore for biomass collection. Government extended the tax benefit offered to startups, sovereign and pensions funds and certain investment units housed in the GIFT City's International Financial Service Centre by 1 year. The fiscal deficit target for financial year 2025 was estimated to be 5.1% of the GDP, better than expected, while the financial year 2024 target was also revised down to 5.8%. The full-fledged 2024-25 budget on July 23 is expected to mark significant economic policy statement with focus on achieving developed nation status by 2047 and making India the most sought investment destination in the world. Priti Tripathi for DD India.
And Deepika Mehta is joining us from Vijay Chowk in New Delhi. Deepika, every year on this day, we see that the Finance Minister has a tough balancing act to do between meeting people's expectations and ensuring that economic imperatives are not lost sight of. What are people's expectations in general and some of the sectoral expectations that you could bring to us?
Good morning, Munmun and Ramesh. Right now we are at Vijay Chowk and we just showed you the visuals of Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the other ministers, the top cabinet entering the parliament because we are just outside it, and right now the cabinet meeting is going on in the Sangoshti Bhavan of the Parliament House, and after that at sharp 11 o'clock we will expect the announcement of the budget to begin. It's going to be an hour, almost an hour long speech by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, where, as you said, the expectations, would that meet with what people are actually expecting or not, that would be seen. And before that we heard in yesterday's economic survey report also that stability has been the key word all throughout, and as our esteemed guests were also speaking that the budget is going to be really excellent. And yesterday also we heard that the budget is on a very strong wicket from the top diplomats. So here today what we are expecting, as what the people are also expecting, that the budget is going to favor the MSMEs because we are focusing towards new startups, towards new business sectors. The manufacturing sector is also going to get a good boost because the capex is also expected to be increased, because as you would remember, Prime Minister Narendra Modi also said in yesterday's speech that this is going to be a budget of Vikasit Bharat that will pave the way for the next 5 years of the current government. And this is a challenge indeed because India has got the largest population across the world. Meeting the expectation is not an easy task, but overall it sends a very strong picture when we talk in the global context, because India is setting a new example not only with the kind of budget it is going to present, with the kind of expectations it will meet or not meet, that remains to be seen, but also with the picture that Nirmala Sitharaman, Finance Minister, got it clicked with the President, who is also a woman, and sending a very strong message. And also it remains, it is a very important point to note here that this is the 7th straight budget for Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, breaking the record of Morarji Desai also. So a lot of points and a lot of records have already been made. Let's now hear in the next budget speech on what are the pointers that would really delight the people and would uplift India and make India on track towards becoming the 3rd largest economy, which is the top agenda of the current Modi 3.0 government. Munmun.
Right, Deepika, do stay on for some more time. We'll come back to you momentarily. Now, in the meantime, an artist from the northern Indian state of Uttar Pradesh has drawn a 6-foot-long portrait of Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman with charcoal on wall.
People's expectations are always high ahead of the budget, and people would expect this to be a people's budget, a budget that would echo their demands and expectations. An interesting aside ahead of the budget day. In 30 minutes from now, we expect the budget papers to be first laid by the Finance Minister, followed by presentation of Union Budget 2024-25, a 7th consecutive one, the first one of Modi Government 3.0. And it is pretty clear now from what the Prime Minister said yesterday at the start of the budget session that this is going to lay the foundation for the next 5 years and also for 2047, by when India aims to become a developed nation. Okay, Professor Vishandas, let's come to the brass tacks now. In terms of focus areas, would you expect a boost to the manufacturing sector? Would you expect a boost to the farm sector because you've been a former chairman of the CSEP? Would you expect an impetus to job creation? What are the major focus areas?
Yes, all three of this you mentioned, because agriculture is the foundation stone, because if you divide the economy, it can be into 3 layers. At the bottom is the agriculture, secondary is the secondary sector, that MSME and then manufacturing industry, and third is the service sector, and most important is the jobs, because creation of job creates stability within the economy, within the nation.
Right, Professor, I hate to interrupt you there. We are getting these visuals of Prime Minister Modi entering Parliament House before Minister Sitaraman presents a 7th consecutive budget in under 30 minutes from now. These are the latest visuals, like I said, coming to you from Parliament House of Prime Minister Modi making his way to the Lok Sabha, the lower house of India's Parliament, where Minister Sitaraman will present the budget for 2024-25.
At the start of the budget session, the Prime Minister had said that this is the budget session that we are moving forward with the goal of gradually implementing the promises that he had made to the nation. He said that we have a 5-year mandate and the budget will set the direction for our work over the next 5 years, laying a strong foundation for achieving our vision of a developed Bharat by 2047, when we celebrate 100 years of independence. And budget copies have now arrived in Parliament. Remember, there are several physical copies of the budget. The budget is also available on the digital format after the budget speech is presented by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman. So it's the usual customary start to the budget day, but nevertheless every year there are fresh expectations from the Finance Minister and from the budget as a whole, and people are looking forward to some incentives, to some concessions, etc., to more tax buoyancy going forward, maybe more spending for the country, making more moves really to attract more investment and create more jobs. Yes, Professor Vishandas.
Yes, on agriculture, because if you assume that economy is a 3-layer, the primary is the agriculture, secondary is the MSME industry, and third is, so it's a kind of rocket. If you have to launch the rocket, that means you have to grow faster, then you have to fire from the bottom, meaning thereby agriculture reforms have been pending for quite a while, and I expect it will get a lot of attention of the finance minister. And secondly, because the compliance burden on the MSME particularly and the small manufacturer is very, very high, and that draws a lot of disproportionate resources, both in financial and non-financial of this, and I expect that the compliance burden for the small and MSME particularly will be reduced, because they take disproportionate energy and resources compared to the big companies. Therefore, they will do something to make it simplified and demystify all the compliance burden. And third is job creation is very, very important, because that really gives a kind of peace, because creation of job gives peace to the society. Society means I'm using in a broader sense the nation, because if people are employed and they don't get time to do any kind which is against the nation, so that is one. It's not only keeping them busy, but giving them the livelihood, and plus it creates the peace and the very congenial atmosphere for the country to grow. Those are very important and far reaching this. Farmers, for instance, this farming sector occupies 46.5% of the workforce, 60% of the land, and 83% of fresh water, yet gives only 15% in terms of the GDP or GVA, that gross value addition. So something requires to be done, because it gives a very resource, because domestic resource cost in agriculture is quite high, but but the return is not so commensurate with those resources. Therefore, they have to have some impetus on agriculture, jobs, and reducing the burden of compliance, because compliance even now on the MSME is very, very high. So these things to me are the priority area. I expect the FM will do something on this. I'm quite sure, almost 99%, something on these things will be very, very visible in the budget.
Ms. Jahagirdar, if, as we probably agree, the government has a 25-year horizon for itself and it wants to make India future ready. But the question some people would be asking is this: if the budget has to be forward looking, as an industry stakeholder, what do you think are the essential prerequisites or attributes of a forward looking budget in your estimation?
I would agree with the learned professor here. I think we need a rationalization of compliance burden, because I mean SMMEs are even bigger than startups, and startups are really how jobs are created. Your next sort of big companies get created, wealth gets created. So to be able to revitalize any sort of sector, you need to be able to allow startups to emerge over there. But if the burden of compliances is so high on SMEs and MSMEs, can you imagine how much worse it is for startups? So I think there has to be a rational outlook to compliances versus ease of doing business. I think we need to unlock domestic pools of capital, because it's only the domestic pools of capital that works towards the betterment of the home country, right? So we can't expect and look towards foreign capital to come in and to sort of help grow startups or SMEs and MSMEs. And I think to the professor's point about the burden that there is, in terms of resources in agriculture and the contribution to the GDP, I think there should be a lot more awareness about how this can be modernized, how can it be a better sort of source of income for the farmers, as well as add to the overall GDP of the country. So I think the larger point really is to unshackle some of the regulations, some of the old sort of laws that are there, and I think there has got to be some tax incentive. I think if you want domestic capital to sort of support Indian startups, and which includes startups in the agri-tech space, space tech, deep tech, in AI, we need to incentivize domestic capital. Right. So we need to look at capital gains. We need to offer a lot of incentives to capital which is willing to take this risk.
Right, and let's get perspective from Chennai now. Anbarasan is joining us from there. What is the mood in Chennai ahead of the budget expectations that you can take us through? Anbarasan. If you could hear me, Anbarasan, I was asking you that what's the mood ahead of the budget. You have an expert with you. Please tell us what he has to share on his expectations from the budget.
Shortwell Union Finance Minister going to submit her budget. Here the expectation from Tamil Nadu is high, and we can see that the 2 days before the Chief Minister has wrote the letter to the Union Minister regarding the budget allocation for various development schemes, particularly the Chennai Metro Phase 2 and also Madurai and Coimbatore Metro, and elevated expressway for the Tambaram to Chengalpattu. So these kind of project need a more allocation, and also already announced railway projects. The fund has been not been allocated for so many years. So this time also there is an expectation those schemes will be given a budget allocation. And right now we are in a CII event where the various industry leaders are watching the union budget. Right now Chandrasekharan along with us is a industry for the tire industry. We can get an expectation from what the union budget from 24-25 for this. Hello, sir.
Hello. Now we have seen that the country has been growing at a fast pace in the last few years, and with this being the 7th budget of the finance minister, we expect a lot of action. There is a lot of good things which have been done, but I believe that the MSME has got a lot of scope to grow. There's a lot of employment generation which is possible. So there are a few things which we look at. One is the production-linked incentives which the government can extend to other industries. There are a few industries which has been benefited because of this, but if it is extended to labor-intensive industries like the tire industry, it would be quite good. Other than that, the ease of doing business is something which is expected on a large scale. The third point is, if we have the GST tax structures modified, if we have only about 3 levels of GST, then that could be of great interest, for the industry. It would, iron out a lot of issues with the GST council, with the GST filings of returns and stuff like that. These are 3 major things. Other than that, specifically for the tire industry, what we look at is the requirement of the industry is about 1.2 million tons of rubber, natural rubber, whereas in India we are growing only about 600,000 metric tons of natural rubber. So if the government can allow the industry to import to the extent of shortage of material, then I think there will be a lot of growth for the industry. Also, there is an inverted duty structure. We have finished goods coming in because of the FTA and other schemes. There is a lot of finished goods coming in at lower duties, whereas our key raw material is being charged at 25% duty. So that does not allow the industry to grow. So we are expecting the government to do something about this. Then there's also one more important thing. There is a lot of scrap being imported. In the recent past, the government has introduced the EPR norms for the rubber industry. In one side we are looking at how the rubber should be recycled, and on the other side the recyclers are importing a lot of rubber. In the last 4 or 5 years, we have seen a tremendous increase in import. What was about 250,000 tons of scrap has now gone up to 13.5 million, 14 million tons of scrap being imported in the country. So we should deal with only the scrap being generated within our country and not become a dump yard for the world. So these are the areas where the tire industry and the rubber industry is expecting changes, and hopefully we are keeping our fingers crossed. I'm sure that we will have good news at the end of today's session.
As the hope is high in Chennai and Tamil Nadu, the industry state where there is a lot of expectation from union budget. We need to see it from there. Back to you.
Right, Anbarasan, thank you. That was my colleague Anbarasan Elango reporting from Chennai. Munmun, time to go back to Mumbai one more time on this broadcast before we start listening to the budget speech by the minister in the Lok Sabha. Shama, you have a guest with you, we are told. Take it away.
Well, yes, Ramesh, we were speaking about markets and we were speaking about the industry expectations. We have Swati Salgaonkar with us. She is the chairperson of the Western region of CII. Swati, we were speaking about how the government will lay the thrust on R&D, more investments in R&D. You were talking about innovation. What are you expecting?
Thank you. I think CII has been working very closely with the government at all levels, on our inputs for the budget. And I think one theme that really cuts across is innovation. So if you talk about, emerging technologies, if you look at AI, if you talk about, the fact that we're on the brink of the 4th industrial revolution, I think technology and innovation is really going to play a leading role. And if you look at India, our R&D spend right now is sub 1%, which it's really quite dismal compared to, around 4% where it needs to be. So we're really hoping for, more of a thrust on innovation and, of course, I think, incentives and encouragement for both the private and the public sector in this field.
All right. So we are told that we have very less time. The budget will be announced shortly. So, yes, Ramesh, that was Swati Salgaonkar speaking about how, the percentage really has to be increased where it is currently right now, and it really needs to be up, to say about 4%. Back to you.
Well, thank you for joining us, Shama, and we'll keep coming back to you for reactions after the budget speech presentation as well. Professor Vishandas, defense is one sector which gets amongst the highest allocations. After debt servicing, if we see the highest allocation goes to defense. As far as our defense budget is concerned, it's said to be the 4th largest in the world, and it was around 2% of the GDP in the interim budget. Do you expect, the government to continue in that vein? So much of money, in fact, 53% of the budget goes to salaries and pensions. So do you expect a lot in terms of increase for capital acquisitions, for indigenization, as well as purchases for Rafale aircraft, etc.?
Yes, definitely, because budget, it has to be balanced, not only the domestic constituency and the imperatives for the domestic thing, but it has to have some investment in the defense, because you have to protect your border, and our defense has to increase to enable us to sleep in peace. We are sleeping in peace because the government has invested something in the military, and there is an imperative, because we can't be doing something in isolation of what our neighbors are doing. So we have to do something to meet the challenges we are facing, and which are not going to be subdued. They, in my opinion, they are going to be increasing challenges, not even the same level, not pass, but then it's going to. So government has to have a matching kind of thing so that it can protect our borders with the great vigor, and for this obviously money is required, and the defense budget has to be augmented, and that is necessary. And no country can develop if it is entangled in issues with their neighboring or any other country, because otherwise country cannot grow unless you ensure the peace within, and that is also a way to ensure the peace, because if you want to live in peace, you have to be prepared for the war. That is very clear. No, I don't want to mince the words. You have to be prepared. Not necessarily you have to indulge, but we believe in the doctrine of no first offense.
Right. You have to prepare for a war, but you need not necessarily wage a war.
No, never, because India has a history, and then we have a homegrown kind of thing. We have never indulged into this.
Absolutely.
But we have to be
Indeed, point taken.
For this.
Right, Professor, let's take a moment to play out and recall the last 6 budgets and presented by Minister Sitaraman. Take a look.
Well,
right, so these are the 6 budgets that the minister had presented since 2019. There's 19, 20, 21, 22 and 23, and also the interim budget. Let's take a look at what she had to say in each of those budgets.
Yes, absolutely. These are visuals of the last 6 years, so to say, including the interim budget presentation that happened on the 1st of February this year. So, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman is going to present her 7th consecutive budget, a record in itself. And you can also see how in each of those frames that you see, she is holding a red Bahi Khata in her hand, the Indian touch to the budget presentation exercise. Since the COVID-19 pandemic, the papers in it have been replaced by a paperless format in the form of a Made in India tablet, and that of course is a representation of both Made in India as well as of Digital India.
We're also getting the visuals of Lok Sabha Speaker Om Birla walking in before the presentation of the Budget 2024. Remember, we're just moments away from the presentation by Minister Sitharaman of Budget 24-25, which will begin in about 10 minutes time from now. In the meantime, just to put this into context for viewers, Minister Sitharaman will be presenting her record 7th consecutive budget, and then she surpasses even former Prime Minister Morarji Desai's record of 6 consecutive budgets as Finance Minister between 1959 and 1964.
Absolutely. We're standing by for that moment. You earlier saw the Lok Sabha Speaker there in the lower house of Parliament just moments before the presentation of Finance Minister's 7th consecutive budget. Well, Professor Vishantas, you were talking about the importance of allocating more and more, particularly under the capital allocation head of defense. But if you look at the rural sector, we see that there has been some distress in the rural sector. There's a mention of that in the economic survey as well. Year after year, we see more and more allocations to various social sector schemes and rural schemes like Manrega, Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, Pradhan Mantri Gramin Sadak Yojana. In this budget, what do you expect in terms of some benefits for the rural sector and rural folk?
See, every 2 Indians out of 3 2 out of 3 Indians live in our villages. And we have more than 6 lakh villages in the country. Obviously, they carry a disproportionate weight. And government has to do something on rural industrialization, and which includes the farmers also. I can wish, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but my wish is rural tourism. Now there are things where in certain villages in say UK, I visited UK, USA, people are so passionate about visiting their respective rural area, and their rural area is more than our cities. So there is one region that you develop the rural area where a lot of interest is being aroused, and then it will spur the growth in the rural area, rural India. And that is one way, rural industrialization, cottage industry, and that is the one thing where there is a great opportunity and propensity to create job, because job creation is very important. It's not only a livelihood, but it creates peace within the nation, within the boundaries of the country. That's my belief, and my research shows this really is a byproduct, but this is very important byproduct if you ensure peace by creating jobs, because people will not get any time to think something against the national interest. And that is very important, and government has recognized this to my mind, and they are going to invest something to create more job, and everything will take care of itself. So this is because even the World Bank says that the investment of 1 rupee or $1 in non-agriculture sector creates more than 2 to 3 times growth if you invest in the rural and agriculture. And therefore, the return on this is there. And so we have to move away from the subsidy regime, less subsidy, more investment. Because subsidies give a kind of, it's like a steroid, it gives a immediate results, immediate return, but long-term solution lies in investment, not in the subsidy. Right. And therefore, I am expecting some changes in this regime of more emphasis more on infrastructure, the investment, real investment, rather than the subsidies.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And you empower, and then skill upliftment, but upgrading the skills of unskilled is very important, because, for instance, the engineers or the graduates, 2 graduate if the university produce, only 1 is employable. Now, this is a national wastage. 50% of your graduates are not employable. That's really something which shakes my belief in the system. Mm-hmm. The government has to do something to upgrade the skills of unskilled workers. And therefore, and if the time permits, I can give just quick illustration. Sure. I did a study in Gujarat, some district, where the people who are working in agriculture at the rate of 250 rupees a day, they were trained only for 20 days, and they were trained how to polish the diamond. Their income increased 5 times, 1250 rupees. And that is just one illustration, where the even so-called uneducated person can be upgraded their skills, and they can earn many more times. And that's the way the economy can spur.
Indeed. Ms. Jahagirdar, we are moments away from the budget presentation, so very quickly, if you will. Now, in India's federal structure, states play a preeminent role in implementing the national policies, including on economic policies. Now, that said, the centre's policy prescriptions might be there, but how does the government incentivize the states to become stakeholders in the economic growth of the country in terms of foreign direct investment, supply chains, manufacturing, and also when you talk about the China +1 model, given the recent developments after the pandemic in particular?
We are only beginning to see that sort of federal competition, a healthy competition, that each state now is aware that they need to create, more industries, new technologies, innovation, because each state knows that for their own sort of, cohort of citizens to stay in that state, you need to make it attractive, whether it's the quality of job that you do, not just getting a job, but the quality of job, the quality of your lifestyle matters today. we have a very large aspirational population. We've seen it a little bit in the way mobile and the internet penetration has happened in this country. So it tells you that even somebody sitting in a remote village in India is now looking at a better lifestyle, a better income potential. So I think the government and the states are beginning to sort of both collaborate as well as lead to their own policies. I know that UP has some very progressive policies in place to attract startups and create newer hubs in innovation and technology. Karnataka has it. Andhra Pradesh, Chandrababu Naidu has always been a big believer and supporter first of the IT industry and now of course of the startup industry as well. So I think every chief minister today is acutely aware that if you want, citizens to choose that state to live in, they need to provide high quality jobs, not just jobs. Because even when somebody starts at the bottom of the ladder, they're looking for a way to go up the ladder. Nobody wants to just do a menial job anymore. And I think that's a great thing for us. I mean, we've got the manpower, we've got the intellectual power actually. And I think, India deserves to be a great country, an economic force in the world.
Yes. Ms. Jahagirdar, what do you expect in terms of incentives for the sunshine sectors within the startup space? For instance, artificial intelligence, machine learning, 3D printing, to name a few.
Just one quick point on that. I believe that India needs all kind of industries within the startup ecosystem because we've got a very wide swath of the kind of citizens we have, the kind of skill sets we have. So only focusing on deep tech will not really serve us well because that's a very narrow base of job seekers and job creators that we'll service. But on incentives specifically overall, again, I mean, both central government and state governments are beginning to talk about, creating a fund of funds, enabling sort of setting up factories when it comes to semiconductors, especially. I think Assam has been very proactive. Again, UP is looking to attract this kind of industry. So I think, like I said, we need more carrot than stick to encourage industry, domestic capital to feel encouraged to support these newer technologies because these are always going to be high risk.
Right.
But it's important for the nation.
Fair enough. Ms. Jahagirdar and Professor Vishen Das, like we've been saying here on this broadcast, we are standing by for the much anticipated 7th consecutive budget to be presented by Minister Sitharaman, and we'll go shortly live to the Lok Sabha, India's lower house of parliament, for the actual budget presentation. But very quickly in the meantime, Professor, one last time before we hand it over to Minister Sitharaman, in terms of wish list, very quickly, if you will, your wish list in terms of what you expect from this year's budget.
Well, I expect three things quickly. One is the reforms in the agriculture, investment in the infrastructure, and then rural tourism and rural industrialization, then creation of jobs, and then making the burden of compliance to a lighter, rather. It should be tight but light.
Fair enough. Ms. Jahagirdar, you get the last word very quickly, if you will, as to your expectations as an industry stakeholder.
I think it's time for India to hit escape velocity. I think we've got all the sort of ingredients for it. We've got a stable economy. Inflation is under control. We are growing. I think the China +1 can really be our moment in the sun. And I think the government should enable by being, more sort of business friendly, by being, lighter on compliances, the rigidity that has set in. I think if we get all that, no doubt that we'll be a $10 trillion economy, not just a $5 trillion economy very soon.
On that optimistic note, Munmun, can we thank our guests, Ms. Jahagirdar and Professor Vishen Das, before we cut live to the Minister's speech from the Lok Sabha?
Absolutely. Grateful for you having joined and for sharing your valuable inputs. And we'll be now going across to India's Lok Sabha, that's the lower chamber of India's parliament, where Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman will be presenting a 7th consecutive budget, surpassing the record of former Prime Minister Morarji Desai. A lot of expectations from this budget because this is going to be the first budget in Modi 3.0 government, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi is back with the mandate of the people, and he would want to set the agenda not just for the next 5 years but up to 2047, when India would like to be a developed nation by then.
Munmun, one minister in particular who would be watching with interest is Railways Minister Ashwini Vaishnav. Remember, as per the Economic Survey's report, the railway's capex increased by